Happy Memorial Day. Welcome here to another edition of the HuskerOnline Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, and sitting next to me to my right is not Robin Washington, as you probably figured out. We're joined in studio here by HuskerOnline's Grant Hansen, who's been with us the last 3 years, leading our baseball coverage. And Robin is on vacation. Grant is joining us here for the opening headlines segment because the opening headline is Nebraska baseball. And Sip, nobody's covered Nebraska baseball more in depth the last few years than Grant Hansen. So
yeah, Grant's earned this 3 years.
Yes.
3 years of
3 years, no regionals.
Yeah.
Now.
Oh boy, and Nebraska's heading to Stillwater is the big news.
Yeah, it's a good draw in the terms of the location. It's gonna be drivable, less than 6 hours.
Yep.
It's a good draw, really. I think in terms of who they're playing in the opening round in Florida, because you have two elements here. It's a team that's kind of underperformed in the SEC. They won their last SEC series of the year against Georgia, which was big. 28-27. It's about how they got in, was winning that series. And so you'll get Brett Sears in that game, and then you face Oklahoma State in that next round, kind of get a chance to maybe get some redemption from a few years ago and get rid of those demons too. So I think you got to be pleased with it. If you're Nebraska, you saw some projections to Kentucky. That would not have been a good draw. Texas A&M, the Trev trifecta, you avoid that. So I think overall you got to be pleased with where you ended up, and it's a lot better than drawing number one Arkansas in 2021.
Yep. Yeah, and I think logically there were three that made sense: Arkansas, Oklahoma State. And NCAA likes to bus. Oklahoma, they had already played this year once. I mean, what do you know about Oklahoma State, Grant? What kind of year did they have? How do they stack up in the RPI?
You're on the spot.
Do
some Oklahoma State scout over there.
I can tell you, it's a tough place to play. I mean,
yes.
I mean,
it is.
It used to be known as a home run hitter's park,
and it'll be different. It'll be different than 2 years or 3 years ago, or not 3 years ago, 5 years ago when Nebraska was there, because then the park was damaged, if I remember right, and they had to play it at a minor league park.
No,
right?
Oh yeah, you're right. They played it.
They blew it in the. I mean, Nebraska almost went to the Supers that year.
Yes,
you're right. They played it at Bricktown.
Mm-hmm. Now the Cowboys finished 40-17, Big 12 tournament champions. Oklahoma was the Big 12 regular season champ. Okay, so to get through that tournament last week. Oklahoma State in this new Big 12 with a bunch of weird teams that, formerly were probably at large bid only sort of teams. Mm-hmm. But you beat Texas Tech, UCF, you lost to in 10 innings in the second round. Then you go beat Texas Tech again in an elimination game, UCF in an elimination game, and then Oklahoma in the championship. So, really, really strong run that in some ways is basically one win different from Nebraska's. And the format in the Big 12 tournament is a little bit different, but I mean, it's obviously a talented ball club, and they didn't get out last year. They didn't get out of the Stillwater Regional. They lost to, I'm trying to remember who ended up winning that. If it was Dallas Baptist and former Nebraska pitcher Braxton Bragg that got out of that, or if it was Oral Roberts, I think.
Well, and Will Bolt's one of his best friends, Justin Seeley, was on that Oklahoma State coaching staff last year. He's no longer coaching in Stillwater, so there's and he coached with Rob Childress, so you kind of lose that Husker connection in Stillwater. But that coaching staff is Josh Holliday, Matt Holliday, Robin Ventura.
Oh, Robin Ventura's an assistant. Interesting, former major league third baseman. Okay, Florida's got a big bopper.
Yeah, Jack Caglione, and also probably one of the best, if not the most recognized two-way players in the country. 4.35 ERA on the hill. He started 13 games this year for Florida. Probably the only pitcher for Florida that has been that consistent. He's the most starts on the team by a wide margin, and that's kind of been the stumbling block at different points this year is the pitching staff, which has a 6.27 team ERA for Florida. So that's kind of been tough. Now, some of that's shifted because you're in the SEC, but then Caglione at the plate, 415. I mean, he is an incredibly talented hitter. This is a team with CWS experience. So, I mean, it's not going to be easy. But again, it's a team that's kind of struggled at different points this year and could catch fire. But 28-27 overall, 13-17 in SEC play.
Grant, Nebraska played 6 games in Omaha in the Big Ten tournament, winning their final 5 to capture the conference crown. Is there any fear at all of some fatigue? I mean, that's a lot of baseball, a lot of high stress baseball that they played in Omaha. It was a great moment for the program, but just to kind of regroup, get your emotions ready, kind of figure out the pitching staff situation here as they head out to Stillwater.
No, I think that'll be really interesting to talk to Will Bolt about that here in about 20 minutes. We've talked a lot this year about not getting too high, not getting too low. And for the most part, when reporters have asked them that question, players or coaches, it's been after a bad loss or something that didn't go Nebraska's way. Now you're doing it after something that was basically the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So it'll be really fascinating to see how they handle that. And then on top of that, for the pitching perspective, they're in great shape. There's a lot of people that were not happy with not starting Brett Sears game 1. Well, it turned out that was the complete right decision to make. And he was able to come back and close it out on Sunday. So you'll have him fully rested. You'll have Mason McConaughey fully rested. None of those, an extra day of rest for Sears. And McConaughey will have an extra day of rest. So you have 2 co-aces that'll be fully ready to go. And then after that, I don't know. It's tough between Will Walsh and Jackson Brockett for who would start a potential third game for Nebraska if they get there, because Brockett has pitched really well in 3 of his last 5 appearances. The other 2 that he did pitch were duds. Meanwhile, Walsh just gave you a complete game. So I think that'll be a matchup thing. Both those guys are left-handed hitters, or left-handed pitchers. 2
lefties.
It'll depend on, I think, what Nebraska's pitching staff thinks of how those 2 guys match up, because Walsh is kind of the gimmick is not necessarily a fair thing to say, but he doesn't throw a fastball over 90 miles an hour most of the time. And so it's just going to be a matter of, okay, do you think that his, for lack of a better word, his junk pitches, his breaking balls, his changeups, all that stuff, if that plays better against Nebraska's opponent in that third game than what Jackson Brockett brings to the table? That'll be the question.
We're talking here with HuskerOnline's Grant Hansen, our baseball correspondent here for the last 3 seasons, for the better part of 3 years, has covered Nebraska baseball here for the site. Nebraska just selected to play in the Stillwater Regional, which opens up play Friday. Do we know the game times? Are they playing that in the evening or the day game? Do we
it's a good question. Yet? I don't know. We got on here as quick as we could before that came out. So as soon as the
host team makes the decision.
Okay. So, and I would guess Oklahoma State would want to play at night. Yeah. I could be wrong.
Now, Van Horn was the opposite. He used to like to play early to be done.
Okay.
Now, and by the way, the Oklahoma State Regional the last 2 to 3 years in Stillwater has been one of the best regionals in terms of atmosphere every single time.
I've been there. I can't remember what year it was. I wasn't there for Bricktown.
They played Cal State Fullerton was down there one year.
Yeah, that's the year I was there.
And I think
that was way.
It's always been a good regional. Cal State, Fullerton, Nebraska, Okie State. that's 3 pretty dang good teams.
And it was really good last year, even though the Cowboys got bounced pretty quickly.
Hey, don't you think the Friday start alleviates the fatigue factor? You got long.
Yeah, you got plenty. Just kind of cooling off a little bit in the emotions.
If it was a Thursday first game, I might entertain that a little more, but they got plenty of time.
Who are they matched up on the bracket and the other side if they went to a super regional?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember who was on the other side. I think it was manageable. Well, because it's the 11 seed, so it would be the 4. Does that sound right?
No, the 6.
6. Okay. So it might be NC State. I think
Keep talking. I'll get. Yeah, we went on right. I'll get the break.
And by the way, while I kind of wrap up the Stillwater thing, it went to a game 5 2 years ago, and it was Arkansas and Oklahoma State, and it was again game after game after game, just electric. Oklahoma State's going to bring it. Like Nebraska is not going to be able. Nebraska is not going to be able to come in there. Well, I could be wrong, but
2:00 game, by the way, set Friday.
2:00,
Nebraska.
Okay. And they're not going to be able to just come in there and take that thing over like they did Schwab the other day. Oklahoma State will not let that happen. Although, I think it'll be pretty close to 50-50, but it's going to be a really, really fun environment, and the amount of teams and the storylines that are in this thing. I think just from a fan's perspective, you could not have got a better draw.
It'll be hard for Nebraska fans to get in there, though, because Oklahoma State season ticket holders will get first access.
Yeah, I think 50-50 I think really that's optimistic.
Which, maybe that's a challenge.
There's no way. Because the season ticket holders of Okie State are going to not turn. That's why you get baseball season tickets for the regional week.
Now, of course, when Nebraska is playing Florida and that 2:00 game, it'll be different. But
that'll be different.
When you get to the night game Saturday or whatever time they decide to play that,
Nebraska is dangerous.
2 o'clock, and Oklahoma State Niagara is at 6.
Okay. Wouldn't you regard Nebraska as dangerous?
I would. Yeah. I think because you have the starting pitching to do this, right?
Yes.
And so that was kind of the big takeaway for me from this week, especially when we talked to teams that Nebraska beat. Head coach Bill Mosiello for Ohio State, head coach Jeff Mercer for Indiana, which, by the way, congrats to the Hoosiers on getting in. Big Ten got 3 teams in this thing. But that was the talk was, look, Nebraska has a starting pitching to make a run.
Mm-hmm.
And Rob Childress has done an excellent job in getting that depth developed to the point where, and you'll see a little bit more about this in a notebook I'll have later up this week, but Nebraska has as a pitching staff has a ton of different, each guy has a different pitch package is what Mercer said. And they all execute it very well. And they can bring different guys in that play well off each other's pitch packages. So Nebraska has the depth to do this.
The pitching depth.
And the depth at the plate. I mean, like let's be completely honest about that. I don't think anyone could have seen Gabe Swanson doing what Gabe Swanson did this last week. The fact that Gabe Swanson probably would have been the Big Ten tournament MVP if not for Josh Caron hitting 6 home runs, a tournament record. I think Nebraska has the position player depth they've not been healthy basically all year long. They've been unhealthy and they've been dealing with injuries and guys have stepped up. So top to bottom, this team is deep enough to do a lot of damage.
Dangerous.
And Nebraska is matched up in the winner of this regional will play the winner of the Clemson regional. But is there a road for Nebraska to host a super? It would take Coastal Carolina, Vanderbilt, one of those two, or High Point, but Coastal Carolina and Vanderbilt, 2 very good programs that have won national titles. To win, and then Nebraska to win, and then they'd make a decision who would get to host. But otherwise, the winner of Stillwater, if Clemson wins, that super regional will be in Clemson.
Okay.
So, Grant, safe travels to
Stillwater. It's gonna be fun.
Hey, great job.
Eskimo Joe's, you got to check it out.
Okay.
Hey, Grant, good job. That was fun.
I knew you would have like a ton of recommendations for places to go. So,
Eskimo Joe's is not exactly original.
Well, it's like an iconic Stillwater.
Yeah,
place.
you got to go.
You got to go there.
I guess you do.
Quit being an old curmudgeon.
I'll just stop there. Yeah, go to Eskimo Joe's because that's what you have to do.
I mean, you go there one time. But yeah, it's a good place. Well, Grant, safe travels to Stillwater. Looking forward to the coverage. Follow Grant Hansen as he'll lead the way for Husker Online down in Stillwater this upcoming week. We'll talk more baseball next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, talking some baseball here as Nebraska heading to Oklahoma State. But before I get to that, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by Omaha Steaks. With Father's Day right around the corner, what do you need to give the man who does everything? Easy. You give him an experience he'll never forget. You give him Omaha Steaks because a world-class dad deserves a world-class steak. The Father's Day experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to put a smile on the big guy's face this summer with hand-selected gift packages starting at just $89. Just go to omahasteaks.com and use the promo code HuskerOnline at checkout for an additional discount when you shop the gourmet gift packages for Father's Day. With Omaha Steaks, the possibilities are endless. Endless flavor, endless variety, and endless value. Truly, they have perfected more than the steak, and your dad is guaranteed to love every bite. Pick from premium proteins like the juicy pork chop, air-chilled chicken, and the beefy burgers. We just actually had some of those burgers this week at my house, and they are outstanding. Go to omahasteaks.com. Use that promo code HuskerOnline to get the exclusive savings. Shop for unforgettable gifts that are guaranteed to make Dad's day, because if there's one thing Omaha Steaks knows, it's what dads want. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code HuskerOnline at checkout to save on exclusive packages starting at just $89. Thanks again to Omaha Steaks for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, let's get back into the baseball discussion here. Steve Sipple, it's quite a weekend in Omaha. And when early in the week, they got beat, was it 15-1?
15-2, Sean.
15-2 against Ohio State. It didn't have a great feel. I mean,
no.
And you think about just how close this Nebraska baseball team is to being a host level team. They have adequate Friday, Saturday pitching, as you heard Grant Hansen just say, and McConaughey and Brett Sears. But they've had inconsistencies in that number 3 in the midweek spots, and that's why they're a 2 seed. I mean, but you saw what this team can be when it's all clicking, and we saw that in Omaha in front of some great crowds at Charles Schwab Field.
Yeah, I was saying in the previous segment, they're dangerous. I sort of blushingly admit this. I sat down and watched them closely for the first time this week. They're pretty good. They're better than adequate, those first 2 pitching slots. You had the Big Ten pitcher of the year, Brett Sears, and McConaughey is not far off. And now when you got Jackson Brockett going like that, like he did on Saturday, and Will Walsh, who's basically
Andrew Christo.
Yeah, those guys. Well, yeah, Brockett. I'd say Brockett and Walsh are sort of even, but Brockett looks so good on Sunday. And he's your 3 guy. Now, keep in mind, none of this is a huge surprise because this is the best pitching. This was the best pitching staff in the Big Ten. They have the best pitching staff in the Big Ten. They have a catcher who's red hot in Karen, who hit 6 home runs again, who get 6 home runs in Omaha. 6 home runs in Omaha, 5 games. He is he's really dangerous right now. The lineup's good. They're you got to watch this team now.
Well, in that ballpark, it's geared for pitchers in Omaha, the way the wind blows. Because
no doubt. No doubt.
Whoever designed it, they messed up when they did it. I mean, they have it where if it's a southern wind, it's blowing in. Mm-hmm. And when in the June and July baseball days and when it's hot, what way does the wind blow? Southern. So when it's a hot day, the wind blows in at that ballpark.
Oh, it takes a lot to get it out.
And they played to that ballpark. They had a lot of doubles. They set a record for most doubles in a Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, they had how many doubles?
17.
17 doubles.
I knew you were going to get me on that.
Yeah, it was in your rundown.
And they set a record with, I believe it was 56 or 58 strikeouts.
56
strikeouts.
Yeah.
And so they pitched well, which you got to do in that ballpark. Mm-hmm. And they hit a lot of doubles because home runs are hard. But the other thing is they hit home runs.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do at Schwab Field.
No, and you alluded to it. It's not easy to come back from an opening game loss like that. Although the one thing that I've learned over the years is one loss is one loss. That's it. I mean, I think people kind of sometimes their knee-jerk reaction is, 15-2, it's got to be crushing. No, it's not always that crushing. It's just one loss. That's what it was. But they did have to battle back. Now their backs were against the wall. They handled it well. And it reminds me of something that Will Bolt said. This was a quote. I remember it. Hell, I remember where I was. I was eating at a Perkins out on the interstate. And I remember reading this.
Right on brand.
He said, or one of his players said, we want to be the toughest team in America. And I thought, wow, that's a really lofty goal. And what does that even mean? Well, you know what it means? It means largely it's mental and it's the ability to bounce back. And what they did in Omaha was show extreme toughness, like the toughness of maybe one of the toughest teams in America. They are a tough team. They're going to be hard to bounce out of any tournament. They're going to be tough to bounce out.
You know who else is a resilient and tough bunch?
Who?
Nebraska fans.
Yeah.
And the way that they continue to show up and support this program, we're talking about a state of less than 2 million people that continues to have a Power 5 or Power 4 or Power 2, whatever you want to call it now, team that's relevant.
Yeah.
And the reason why is the fans, the support. You saw 13,300 fans at a 10 a.m. game.
10 a.m.
And we left from Lincoln. And I mean,
what time?
We had to get up at like 6:30 or 7. We left the house at 8.
Yeah, I was amazed when I called you and you were in the stands.
It was, I mean,
I was just getting my day going.
Getting from Lincoln down to downtown Omaha for a 10 a.m. start. I mean,
not easy.
So for 13,300 people to do that on a Sunday,
pretty amazing.
That was not easy to do. And the game was supposed to be at 2 because then they moved it earlier because they thought there was a threat of weather. There was no weather issues at all Sunday. It was kind of bizarre.
No, and it wasn't a lot of notice they gave the fans, right? It was 12 hours notice?
I mean, and Ticketmaster didn't even release more seats until 8 or 9 o'clock. It was kind of hard to even get tickets, and they opened them up and had more, but it was a great turnout. And At the ballpark, for the amount of people there that early, I thought they were staffed adequately. They did. I mean, concession lines were manageable.
You were there. What was it like when Gabe Swanson hit that ball to the wall in the ninth?
Electric.
Was that the ninth or
the home
8th?
run and the double were. It was a weird game because it was basically a 2-hour game. It just
quick.
It flew
Pitchers
through.
duel, 2-1 pitchers duel.
And there were it was warmer in the ballpark than you would have thought. For being a 70-degree morning, there was no wind, and that sun was just. Remember, how we sit in the press box for an 11 a.m. football game, and that sun just beams on you. That's what it was like in the ballpark. So it was
warm.
It was warm. I mean, my girls were getting hot sitting there at the game. But I met a lot of great Husker fans at the game, and it was just awesome to see Nebraska. I thought about this. I'm like, God, when's the last time I've sat and watched Nebraska capture a championship? I mean, now volleyball is now obviously, but at the men's level, where you've seen them come into a stadium in Nebraska and win a championship.
Yeah. Well, you were there. Good. Where were you sitting?
We were down the third base line in the ninth row.
Good seats.
Yeah.
Good
There was
seats.
$16 a ticket.
You're right. The game was quick. I looked up, I was listening to parts of it on the radio. I looked at my truck radio. I think it was 12:10. Just after noon. I was like, man, the game's over at noon.
We were back in Lincoln before 2:00.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it was I just give Will a lot of credit. And this is a boost for his program. And I said going in, I think I said on my radio show, surprise me, win the Big Ten. Nebraska hasn't won a league tournament title since 2005. Okay. That's 20 years, Sean. That's 20 full years. They have not won a league. I know you're doing it in your head, but I can just tell you unequivocally, they have not won a league tournament title since 2005. Okay. That was Jabba. That was Alex Gordon. That was Zach Kroenke. That was Brian Dunsing. That was Johnny Dorn.
And then the next year they lost in the league finals to like Kansas. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. Remember.
I was down there.
I was down there too. Yeah, I was down there for all those tournaments. It was remarkable.
Memorial Day weekend in Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
those were wonderful times.
Oh, they were wonderful. So this was beautiful for Will. I give Will a lot of credit. I was very big on Will's hire. I pushed it hard for Nebraska to hire Will, and he's been a little underwhelming. Let's face it, the program's been a little underwhelming, a little, not bad.
He shook his staff up, though.
Yeah, he shook his staff, and Rob Childress, like you covered in the first segment, did a remarkable job with the pitching staff, the best pitching staff in the Big Ten. They don't, God, I'll just tell you something that old man appreciates, Sean. They don't walk anybody. They average fewer than 3 walks a game, which was best in the Big Ten. You know how much I appreciate that? You know what I hate going to baseball games and watching? Walks. When they load them up with a bunch of walks. Oh, God. It kills the fielders. I mean, the fielders are out there going, come on, man, throw strikes. Deadens everybody. This team doesn't throw. They don't walk people. They're dangerous. They'll be dangerous in Stillwater.
Early in that game, too, you can just see the control that Childress has on a game. Like,
he calls it great.
At the very beginning, Brockett wasn't hitting his spots early. Mm-hmm. And he went out there and talked to him.
Yeah.
Settled him down or whatever he said.
Good point.
Him. And at that point, you're like, God, are they pulling him already? Because it was rough at the start of the game.
Rob will get after a guy. He'll challenge him. He'll challenge his manhood. That's what he does. Now, the other thing that Rob does is calls the game. And there's if you talk to any coach, they'll tell you hardly anybody calls a game as well as Rob does.
In the college game, it's common for the coach to call the game. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in the pros,
I don't know how they do it in the pros.
The catcher calls the game.
Yeah, Rob calls the game. Rob calls this game.
Yeah, and there's only, that's the normal. So he's an elite pitching mind.
Yes, he is. Yeah, and they're best pitching staff in the Big Ten. And now they got those guys going. Sears, McConaughey, Brockett, Walsh.
Don't underestimate Chris out of the bullpen.
I got you.
He's a major league arm talent that just has never put it together, and he's putting it together now. Yeah. He pitched wonderful in Omaha.
Yeah, I guarantee it. There's gonna be some excitement in Stillwater. Guarantee it.
2:00. 2:00 on
First Florida.
Friday.
First Florida.
Yes. Come on now.
Come on, babe.
All right. When we come back, 5 championships for Nebraska in the Big Ten. We're going to talk about that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Back here on the Husker Online Show, Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, talking Nebraska's sports year as a whole. But before we get to that, this segment of the Husker Online Show is brought to you by Ellerbrock-Norris. They've been helping Nebraska business owners protect their purpose for over 120 years. With risk management solutions built for local businesses, Ellerbrock-Norris partners with you on commercial insurance group benefits, business exit planning, safety, and more. Start thinking long-term with your business and create a risk management strategy to protect it. Are your employee benefit costs going through the roof? Talk to Ellerbrock. Are workplace injuries skyrocketing your workers' compensation costs? Talk to Ellerbrock. Hoping to retire in the next 10 years and sell the business to family, key employees, or friendly competitors? Talk to Ellerbrock. Ellerbrock-Norris is helping you protect your purpose, whether it's your business and the employees in it, your life outside of work, or your future retirement goals. Head to ellerbrock-norris.com/HuskerOnline today to get your free risk evaluation. Thanks again to Ellerbrock-Norris for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. Okay, I want to talk more about just the sports year in general for Nebraska, because it's been quietly a very, very good year with baseball capturing the Big Ten championship. They won 5 Big Ten championships this year.
The Nebraska
Athletic
teams,
Department,
yeah.
Women's soccer, men's track, volleyball, men's gymnastics, and then obviously baseball. But then you had the women's basketball team lose to Iowa in the conference championship game, but they won a tournament game in the NCAA. You had the women's track team take runner-up in the Big Ten track and field meet earlier this month. The men's basketball team had maybe its best year in 30 years. Mm-hmm. They went to the NCAA tournament. Wrestling was a top 10 national team again with the way they played this year for Mark Manning. So you go up and down. Everything seems to be heading in the right direction, Steve Sipple. There's one key piece, though. Just one key piece.
And what is that?
What is that key piece that is missing?
Well, they're picked 8th in Lindy's, the Nebraska football
8th
team.
out of 18.
Yeah, 8th out of 18. That's missing. It's missing. But I want to talk about a couple of these teams. You know what gets lost is that John Cook's team won the Big Ten, which correct me if I'm wrong. Abby's sitting here. You can nod. John always says it's harder to win the Big Ten than anything. He won the Big Ten. Don't forget that. They won the Big Ten. It's a powerful
there's no tournament. It
is the most powerful volleyball conference. They won it. And then finished second to UT. And I think people that national championship match stands out in people's mind because it was so one-sided. But don't forget that they won the Big Ten, Nebraska. Also Fred's team. When I think back on the year, I think about volleyball winning the Big Ten, and I think of Fred's team going to Memphis, qualifying for the NCAA tournament. Now they got their teeth rattled, but it was still a huge step for Fred's team, and it was a memorable experience. We come off this segment about the fans. We should have mentioned Memphis. The fans in Memphis, they took over Beale Street, and then they took over. They took over the arena. They took it over
to the point where A&M their fan base was probably a little intimidated by just
embarrassed. If you were A&M, if you're an A&M fan, embarrassed.
Because Johnny Manziel, you could see him when they showed. He was kind of like getting emotional because they were outnumbered. I mean,
outnumbered. I'll say 10-1. How about 10-1?
And they whooped Nebraska, but still
they did. But Nebraska's fans, if you want a glaring example of the passion that this fan base has, I just think of Memphis. I think about that poor kid that came up to me in the breakfast line the morning after the loss and just rushed up to me and said, "Sip, what happened? What happened? I just can't understand what happened."
Sometimes we're therapists on these trips.
Yeah. But I love that. I love that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. Quietly, Nebraska did pretty well.
And yeah, the track and field team, they're really humming under Justin St. Clair, and they're going to get better.
You're calling him Justin St. Clair. Justin St. Clair. Remember that name because for so long it was
Gary Pepin.
Yeah, Gary Pepin. And I still think of that track team as Gary Pepin's. It's not.
They're going to build a stadium seating. They're going to host the Big Ten meet there in 2026. And that will be fun to go to
out on Innovation
Campus.
Campus.
I mean, because you're going to have Oregon and USC. I mean, there's going to be some big time track there. I mean,
super cool.
That will be one of the better meets that's been in Lincoln in years.
2027. 2026. Okay. 2026. That'll be fun for sure. Yeah, I'm glad we did that segment. I'm glad we're doing this segment, recognizing those teams that won those championships because it's not easy.
And softball was going to win too. before the Jordy Ball injury.
Yeah, if they would have had Jordan Ball.
I mean, there aren't a lot of weak links. I mean, give Trev Alberts credit, the accountability that he, pressed on his coaches here.
No doubt. I mean, we dog on Trev a lot. I mean, he hightailed it out of here. It showed no loyalty, but he, you know what mattered? And he instilled winning mattered. He instilled that winning matters. We've had an AD here for sure. One that, we just want to treat everybody well. But Trev made it very clear when he took the job that part matters a lot.
I mean, look at Will. I mean, I'm sure it rattled Will Bolt over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Win the base.
Oh, Will. Going back to Will winning this is big. Anytime you win a league title, be it the regular season or tournament, it's big. So I'm really happy for Will. I think this is a great jolt for Will. I do.
Another one that kind of, he rattled John Walker. I mean, the women's soccer,
absolutely.
The women's soccer program, it kind of looked like it was 100. On borrowed time.
100.
And they almost made the Final Four.
It's a really interesting story because he's an older coach.
He's been here a long time.
I mean, I don't want to say he reinvented himself. It almost felt that. I don't know what he would say if maybe he'd say, I didn't reinvent myself. I've done it the same way. But whatever. This late in his career, he got this title. It's interesting. I can remember distinctly when he took the job, I met with him at Barry's. I mean, that was like 1993 or something. I mean, he's been there.
They were a Big 12 power at that point.
I mean, Abby, tell me how long. I think he's been there 30 years or something.
He's the longest tenured coach.
Yeah.
Well, even the tennis programs, I mean, they upped their game quite a bit. So everything is really heading in the right direction here.
Yeah, I'd have to look at it a little more closely to say everything, but it seems like a lot is for sure.
Like we didn't mention rifle and bowling because
right.
They don't compete in the Big Ten.
Bowling's always good.
Well, and they're not. The Big Ten doesn't have championships in those events.
Right. But Paul Klempa, I know Paul Klempa personally, and his program's always strong. Always.
There's the soccer program right there.
Yeah, I wonder how long John Walker's been there.
A long time.
29 years. See, I remember Sean when he took the job going over to Barry's and doing a story on him. Back just did an interview and 29
years. Have you talked to him since?
Probably not. I mean, well, yes, I've ran into him.
He's gonna be like, it's been 29 years, Sip. Been 29 years. What's it going to take for me to get on morning break? I got to win the national title, coach the Canadian national team to the gold medal.
It is early break for the record.
I call it morning break, morning zoo, whatever you want to call it. Okay. All right. When we come back, Abby Barmore will join the show. We'll take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Watchett, Abby Barmore joining the discussion as the segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by who?
Sean, Larson Motors. We always talk about ad-libbing this. I'm not big on ad-libbing something as important as Larson Motors. So if you're looking for a new vehicle, I'm going to go script mostly here, okay? If you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one locale. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram never has been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Right down the road, I'd say Highway 2, right down the road, Larson Motors, real people,
real deals.
Good job, Sean.
You did a little ad-libbing there. Instead of location, you said locale. You got a little outside the lines there.
I just see if you can catch those little
spicing it up.
Real risky on this Memorial Day Monday. All right, let's get into the mailbag.
Okay, our first one.
Sean?
Been talking a lot about Big Ten championships this year, but who do you think has a really good shot next year to win a Big Ten championship?
For Nebraska teams.
Yes.
Softball, I'm going to throw up there. And Abby, they have to be getting somebody big in the transfer portal the way they've been kind of teasing Twitter.
Yes, yeah. Rhonda Revell's been tweeting out a lot of suspicious just it's a great day to be a Husker, tweets and stuff like that. So we'll see. But somebody that I definitely turned on their post notifications today was Ruby Malin, and she was Washington's ace pitcher. She is from Omaha. I think she's gonna be a sophomore, but Nebraska didn't recruit her when she was in Omaha, but she's in the portal. So I think that's definitely somebody to watch because Nebraska, they've lost their 2 senior pitchers from this season. So then they just have Jordy and a couple of freshmen returning. So adding a pitcher or 2 from the portal would be great for them.
Jordy and Ruby. I like that. Ruby is the last name again?
Malin.
Malin, okay.
And Jordan.
Jordine.
It's Jordan.
Got it.
Steve. I think the track teams are again in great position.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think wrestling will be top 3 or 4.
Wrestling. The problem with wrestling is they got Penn State ahead of them
in
Iowa. Right. It's really hard to win the Big Ten with Penn State and Iowa in the same conference.
Imagine a football recruiting model where it's like the 5-star player at every position. Penn State and Iowa literally probably get the 1 or 2 at almost every position in recruiting.
Yeah, a lot of the time.
And everybody else is fighting for, lower guys. But NIL and other things have equalized wrestling. We saw Michigan win a national title.
Nebraska is fortunate. They're strong. They are strong. Mark Manning, I was going to say Nebraska is very fortunate to have Mark Manning. They are. They're strong. They're never really not strong. It's just Penn State and Iowa is right there all the time.
But yeah, I'll be interested if soccer can rebound again and have another big year. And baseball should be in good shape.
I think so.
I mean, baseball might be picked. I don't know what they lose, but they're going to be picked top 2 or 3 in the Big Ten.
Yeah, you just don't know. I don't know. You get a lot of roster turnover in this day and age. I don't know if you've noticed that. But
USC joins the league, UCLA,
Right.
Oregon,
This is going to get harder. It's going to get harder. Boy, we didn't mention that Omaha now was awarded that Big Ten baseball tournament through 2027. Think about that tournament now with those teams, those West Coast teams.
They'll have to up the field number. I mean, right now the Big Ten has 13 teams, 8 make it. I have to think that,
You think
with
they will?
17 teams, you got to let more than 8 in.
What would you go to, Sean?
10 or 12.
12, maybe.
I just think
12 makes sense to me. Although, how's it logistically then? I mean, you're always dealing with rainouts.
they did a great job this year because they added an extra day.
Right. Would you have to add another extra day?
Tuesday. They started Tuesday, not Wednesday. And then they had
Could you start on a Monday?
No, I don't think you could because your teams are playing Saturday.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard.
turn it around.
You got to give them a travel day Monday.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I think that volleyball has a good shot of winning the Big Ten championship.
Yeah, it's funny, Abby.
Buried the lead there, Abby Barmore.
You know what, Abby? It's kind of funny. It almost goes without saying, right? Right?
Yeah.
You said
What
it,
a
and I
world.
appreciate it. But John has built such a strong program that's like, oh yeah, they'll be in contention.
Nebraska basketball has a better than average chance to make the NCAA tournament, the men's team.
A lot of new faces, though, Sean. Got to see how they come together. A lot of new faces.
Next question.
Okay, next one. We already touched on this a little bit, but where does Nebraska baseball rank with the new teams coming into the Big Ten?
Hard to say.
It's hard to say because USC has been a national power. When you look at their history of a program,
We look at their history.
the
but
Rob
going back to-
Dado
Yeah.
era.
Yeah, you were just a young little South Omaha guy running around when Rod Dado was, or was that even before Sean?
Before
Kelly?
my time.
Yeah, it was before Sean.
My dad went to the famous Minnesota USC game where Dave Winfield pitched for Minnesota, and USC came back. Was it like an 8-run deficit in the 9th inning and beat Minnesota?
Yeah, Dado put together
A dynasty.
Dynasty. That's the word I was looking for. But yeah, these teams coming in, I don't know, Abby. They'll be good.
Oregon got kind of good
They
at
did.
baseball because they bought it. They started a team from scratch. They didn't have a team. Then Oregon State started winning national titles, and Phil Knight's like, let's get a baseball team. And he hired away the old Cal State Fullerton coach back then to start their baseball program. The guy that won national titles at Cal State Fullerton. So they've got money and resources. UCLA is going to have players. They will. Now, Washington, they've been hit and miss. I mean, they've had good players over the years, like Tim Liska came through there. And
Yeah, I want to say again, Nebraska made a big impression on me. A little better. I hate to do this on camera, but I am. I didn't follow them that closely this year. So I was struck by they're good. Will's done a good job putting together that roster. It's a good roster. The pitching staff's strong. They have one of the best pitching coaches in the country. And see, it's one thing to say that, Sean, but then look at it. Look what they did. Second in the nation in fewest walks per game. Led the Big Ten in ERA easily. It paid off. And maybe, Sean, this Big Ten tournament title is sort of the impetus to Nebraska baseball pushing a little bit farther, although we have to acknowledge something that I think it was you. I talked to a lot of people over the course of a week, and I can't remember everybody, but I think it was you who said it is hard to get the players Nebraska used to get when they were in the Big 12. Now get the same type of player in the Big 10. It's harder. It's harder to get Tony Watson here. It's harder to get a lot of the players from the South to come up and play in the Big 10. While you're in the Big 12, it was easier.
Yeah, there's kids in Nebraska this year going to LSU and Arkansas.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. A lot of great Nebraska players, they leave.
Lincoln East's catcher is going to Michigan.
Right.
He's got another year left.
Well, that's Big 10, but
his brother is on the current Husker team, Wordley.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting just with that, and will those West Coast teams up the profile?
Yeah, good point.
And will the Big 12 take a step back in baseball when you lose Texas and Oklahoma?
Yeah, they might.
Will they lose a little prestige? They're going to lose money. We know that. I mean,
they might. That's a good point too. That could actually, in a roundabout way, help the Big Ten. Now, the Big Ten is a pretty good baseball conference. I mean, I watch those teams. They're all right.
Here's the deal: Nebraska, if they just beat South Dakota State, Creighton, and UNO, I don't know if they lost UNO this year, but they can't lose those games.
Those midweek games.
Those 5 losses that they pull in these midweeks. That's why they're not hosting a regional.
Right.
If they win those games, they're hosting a regional.
Like they should. Yeah.
That's how close, and Will Bolt knows it. The line to hosting is that thin, and Nebraska's right there. They're right there.
They are. They're right. They look like a team capable of hosting. Go ahead, Amber.
All right, final question.
Okay, last one. What is your favorite Nebraska baseball postseason memory?
Oh, Sean, come on.
There's several. I mean,
your friend's Justin Seeley.
Well, yeah, his home run was a big one, but I still go back to those first College World Series games they played in, and just watching Nebraska. The president was there. I mean, it was
Khomeini on the mound.
Khomeini on the mound.
Let's say Khomeini. I think it would be Khomeini.
President George W. Bush
standing right behind you
in the ballpark.
Yep. In the press box.
And I mean, that was just unbelievable time in our country. I mean, right after 9/11, and just the president comes to the College World Series in Omaha, Nebraska, throws out the pitch before the first Husker game. And he walks through the press box, and I was sitting there, and he came up and shook my hand.
Yeah, he shook a lot of people's hands. I think, he shook my hand too. It was cool. George Bush in the press box was cool. You know what? Baseball guy. And he warmed up
he threw a great pitch.
Yeah, well, he warmed up in the under the stands in the bullpen area for that. So yeah, that's what I remember. I remember the first game, the first CWS game. The first CWS appearance stands out in my mind because the excitement in this state was incredible. I wish Abby, it was incredible back then.
It was a Friday afternoon game. And
when they would have regionals and super regionals in Lincoln, those are some of the best memories I have as a sports writer. Those regionals and super regionals that Nebraska played host to.
Now, somebody told me this, that when they played Miami in the Supers.
Yeah, I remember.
And they capped the tickets, but they really didn't. They just sold as many GAs as they could. Oh, and they had to announce it at one number, whatever that number was. It might have been 8,000 or 9,000, but I think there was like 14,000 people. It was
incredible. The excitement, it's hard to even describe. What I remember about that is I think I picked Miami to win, and Jabba Chamberlain's dad just creamed me. I mean, he wouldn't let me. He was just, I don't know, relentless coming after me in the stands.
And it was a good Miami team.
It was a fascinating series. And Nebraska was loaded. They were loaded. Nebraska was loaded. And I guess we just thought those times would always continue. And it's hard.
Buck Belzer too, when they won the, when they beat Rice.
Absolutely. That was Dave Van Horn. That was when it was clear that Van Horn was about to break through, and he broke through. Yeah, they were at Buck Belzer when they broke through. I mean, that's people forget that. They weren't at Haymarket.
It was a dump.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was.
I'd like to disagree with you and play that card, but I can't. It was a dump.
I mean, it was just like a high school venue.
Basically.
And I remember there was just like a big pile of dirt in the outfield. You remember that? And,
yeah, I do.
And these witty Husker fans renamed it Mount Buck. And there would be guys that sat on this giant dirt mound behind the outfield with the flag. It said like Mount Buck.
What I remember about it is, what everybody remembers about it is they had that artificial turf infield with a grass outfield. So, yeah, I mean, it was weird right off the bat. Artificial turf infield, grass outfield. The grass outfield, if you walked on it, you were like, okay, they practice football out there sometimes. So it was terrible shape. I mean, it was horrifying. I mean, so yeah, it was quite.
And to host a regional, it was a chore. I remember Butch Hugg back then and his team, they had to bring in a bunch of bleachers.
Oh yeah.
Because they had to make the venue adequate to host a regional.
Yeah, and people are going to kill me for this. They're going to say SIP, but SIP, it had charm. No, not really. I don't think it had much charm. God dang, there's some old timers are going to kill me for saying that. They're going to kill me, but it didn't. I would disagree with that. It was just a subpar stadium.
And then went to Haymarket.
Yeah, and then Haymarket was,
at the time of Haymarket being built, it was
about as good as you got. About as good as it got.
So yeah, lots of memories with Nebraska baseball. But when they've got to that point, if they figure out a way to win in Stillwater, Husker baseball will take over the state the next week.
Oh, if they're in a super regional,
if they're in a super regional, it will take it over.
Oh yeah,
and they got a chance.
Well, I just keep saying they're dangerous because of the pitching. I mean, if you just look at Sears and McConaughey, they give you a shot. Then Jackson Brockett, his emergence remember Jackson Brockett off the travel roster for part of the year. They took Jackson Brockett off the travel roster. Then 3 weeks ago, of course, he had a 9-inning no-hitter, the first in 70 years or so for Nebraska. Will Walsh is going good, but they got the pitching. All right, when we come back, Lindy's preseason college football magazine came out. We'll give some thoughts on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. Before we get into some preseason college football magazine talk, this segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by Husker Online. If you're not a member of Husker Online, check us out. We've got a great deal going on right now. We're going to give you 2 months for $1 by simply using the promo code NU1. That's promo code NU1, 2 months for $1. It's the best offer we're going to give you. And it's only for our YouTube and our podcast listeners. Take advantage of that promo code NU1, 2 months for $1. All right, Steve Sipple, always an exciting time because show it to you. We got our magazines here. Big polar bear on the cover of the Lindy's College Football Preseason Magazine. And I think I might be one of the only people that gets excited because I know when I walk into Barnes & Noble on Memorial Day weekend to get the magazine, like the people look at me like, God, this guy's excited about getting this. Did you go bouncing in there?
Yeah, I did. Was it? I think it was Thursday or Friday I went in there. I forget now.
Bouncing in there, didn't you? And then you were excited to see it on the shelf. There was plenty left today. Now we went in a different Barnes & Noble because I can't go into South Lincoln. You went.
We don't let you into South Lincoln.
No, I went to the one on O Street, which is about, I want to say 48th and O. No,
by the Hy-Vee.
What is that?
Yeah, it's 50th and O.
50th and O. I went to that one. You went to the one
on Pine Lake.
The one at 50th and O. There was a lot left. A lot of Lindy's left.
Yeah, they just hit.
Okay.
And the Athlon will come later, and then the Phil Steele. I think there's basically just 3 of these left.
We might as well do this while we're on the air. Sell them for Lindy's. Go to Barnes & Noble. There was plenty left today, which is Monday at 10 a.m. There were plenty left. Plenty.
But yeah, Tom Dienhart puts together the Big Ten breakdown, and
great job.
He's got Nebraska 8th in the conference right now out of 18 teams. What really got me, and I wrote this today, Sip, there's only one second team all Big Ten selection for Nebraska. That's Nash Hutmacher. And then there's only 2 on the third team, Bryce Benhart and Ty Robinson. Iowa has 4 preseason all Big Ten first teamers.
I read that in your rundown, and what comes to mind is this. You can't pick Nebraska ahead of Iowa based on that, if only based on that alone.
Or Wisconsin.
You can't. Now, people are. It's strange to me. But how do you pick Nebraska ahead of Iowa? How do you do it? I'm not doing it. I won't do it. Now the thing, what it made a big impression on me. I was surprised you didn't mention. You go to the conference picks, 18 teams, no division. That is really jarring to me.
Yeah, if you're Indiana picked 18.
Oh God, Indiana has some skill too, which is weird to see them picked last. They have some good skill position players.
Guess who plays teams 16, 17, and 18 in the conference? Nebraska.
Good point.
Then they play 14 in the conference.
Yeah. Look at this. I mean, look at the bottom of the league. What is going on at Illinois? Why can't Brett Bielema get them better than 17th?
NIL.
17th? Is that what it is? You always say NIL.
Well, they don't have, look at the all-conference teams. You go down the line. Illinois has a third-team guy at center, Josh Kreutz.
Yeah.
And they have a linebacker, Seth Coleman, who's a third-teamer. So their talent level doesn't have a lot, and they obviously play a tough schedule.
17th is as good as, that's just a projection, but Bielema is in his fourth year, right? Third or fourth year. What's going on? Why is Minnesota 15th? Say it, Sean.
NIL.
Minnesota 15th. UCLA 14th. Northwestern an 8-game winner last year, 13th. I guess partly what I'm saying right now, two things. The bottom's pretty good. And the bottom, those aren't bad teams. Most of those teams are.
Rutgers at 10th, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a good spot for Rutgers.
Yeah.
It tells you how far Schiano's taken their program.
Oh, they're not bad. They are not bad. And I have to watch their spring game, Sean. It looks like they got two quarterbacks. They have the Minnesota transfer, right?
Yeah, they picked him up as a TJ Maxx portal buy.
Yeah. What was his name again? You can remember?
Caliamontis.
Yeah.
Ethan Caliamontis.
Yeah. They have him and then the holdover, the guy that can run. So they have two pretty good quarterbacks.
See, like I use that analogy. Rutgers, they portal shop like the TJ Maxx way. They buy kind of a name brand thing on discount.
Good point. So Nebraska, as you said, picked 8th in the 18-team league. It's interesting. Like you can really get lost in that bottom.
Dylan Gabriel and Will Howard are the first and second team All Big Ten quarterbacks. Both are transfers.
Yep.
Both are transfers from the Big 12.
Yep. And the newcomer of the year as picked by Lindy's. Who's that, Sean? Come on, Sean.
Dylan Raiola.
So yeah, it's you're right. Like if you get these magazines, especially in this day and age, with so much roster turnover, you buy these at kind of your own risk because you don't know how accurate it's going to be. But
the portal's closed now, though.
Yeah, but I'm going to plug Dean Hart. I buy Lindy's because of Dean Hart, because I know the Big Ten projections are going to be accurate. I know the write-ups on the teams are going to be accurate because I know Tom. I've known him for 20 years. They're going to buy Lindy's if you're a Big Ten person because you know there's going to be accurate information.
Well, and Phil Still will be accurate on Nebraska.
Yeah, he will.
Rule talked to him. Rule, like Phil Still will have probably the right depth chart.
Well, yeah. Here's the thing with Steele, he waits till the end,
like July.
Yeah, he'll be accurate too. And I'm not disparaging the other magazines. It's just a very difficult situation they're in because of all the roster movement.
I remember when I lived on the East Coast for a summer, it was kind of hard to find these magazines. And there was like I was in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And there was a gas station that had Phil Still there, and I was so excited. I'm like, I'm buying this. I hadn't seen one anywhere.
No, East Coast is not college football land. I've learned that. You go to New York City for the Heisman, it quickly becomes apparent to you, oh, this isn't college football country. It's not. They don't care about it.
All right. Well, I am maybe the most excited person around about College Football Magazine arrival days.
You probably are much more excited than I was because it's $13.
Hey,
it's a big price.
I'm a 1099 guy. I can write my purchase off.
Okay.
You're a W-2 guy, though. You can't write it off.
Oh, that's true. Let's not talk about that.
All right. When we come back, plenty of coverage throughout the week here. Husker baseball. I'm headed to Nashville. So
yeah, what's going on?
Husker on the Headlines will be back Thursday on normal taping day. But we've got the On3 Elite Series event. Couple of 5-star guys will be there for Nebraska. Michael Terry, the wide receiver, and then David Sanders. So I'll get a chance to catch up with a couple of 5-star prospects. But Will Compton is going to be there. Speaking to the group of athletes, the Cavender twins are going to be there as well. It's a summit and an event where they get together the top 50 or so 4- and 5-star athletes to talk about NIL, talk about the branding and all the things that are important. So looking forward to that. And I'll be sure to have a full report on headlines Thursday.
Oh, because we're doing headlines on Thursday.
Normal day.
Okay.
All right.
Ready to go.
That wraps it up here for another edition of Husker Online. For Grant Hansen, Abby Barmore, our producer, Megan Gunther back in Omaha. I'm Sean Callahan.